I wake to the sound of metal breathing. Not the sharp gasp of a wounded thing, but the long, tidal pull of a cathedral drawing in dust and light, and the faint, dry taste of old prayers. The breath travels the length of the forge hall and folds itself around me as I lie on the deck, cheek to iron, ear to the floor's quiet thunder. I keep my eyes closed and count the inhalation as we were taught to count the stars. Patiently, reverently, as if the numbers were rosary beads worn smooth by the dead. On the 7th beat I rise. The rule is 6, but I always add 1 for mercy mine, towards myself, and the engines, towards us all. The nave of the hangar is dim, night lamps gutter in their cages, and the first silver of shift lights glows in the clerestory panes. The scent of sanctified oil hangs motionless in the cold. Far above, gantry bridges cross like ribs. Parchment prayers dangle from them in fragile tassels, knocking together with a dry whisper each time the machine exhales. The sound is a presence, a warmth against the skin. I have known it longer than I have known my own voice. We do not speak at first waking. The mouth must be kept for breath, and the heart for measure. I make the sign of the cog with grease-blackened fingers and step barefoot into the chalked circle that marks my station. Chalk is humble. Oil is proud. Chalk remembers the pressure of a body. Oil remembers the shape of a hand. Both are needed for the rites, and both leave stains that no amount of washing will remove. Benedicta Invictus kneels within her shrine like a mountain that has learned patience. The icon lights along her flanks are quiescent, green glass turned to dark olives. Candles squat at her feet, fat as infants, their wicks asleep beneath pale caps of wax. When she is fully wakened, their flames will lift and gutter, and each guttering will count as a word in the language we use when language fails. But first comes breath, always breath. From the shadows to my left comes the soft tread of Adept Marov, identical each morning. 4 steps, a pause to bow to the east altar. 2 steps, a click as augmetic toes meet the iron edge of the dais. His optics are dark to the naked eye, but I feel their skim across my face like a breeze. He carries the file case against his chest with both hands, knuckles blue from the cold. Within are the blessed unguents and incense resins, the threads of spun copper we lay upon the manifold seals, the fractional seeds of static we wake with a touch and a whisper. He does not greet me correctly. The first voice in this hall must be the Titan's. 9 Vera comes last. The Canoness Automata's boots do not sound like boots at all, but like the slow extrusions of a press, each step set with deliberate pressure and released with a sigh. Incense issues in pale ribs from the grill of her chest plate, steadied by hidden bellows. Her living eye is yonic gold. Her other has been replaced by a cold socket where a relic needle rests when not in use. She brings it out only for the absolution of metal. I have seen her pierce a plate and draw out the sin in smoke. I have seen the smoke tremble as if alive. Together we bow to the princeps' empty throne, a mind casket idle atop its column, cables coiled like sleeping serpents, and then to the machine herself. The hush is almost perfect. The only sound is the breath. In, out, in, out. A thought, the size of a city sinking and rising, the long lungs of old industry, the dream of steel. I begin the rousement. Not words yet. Words are for later. First the gestures. Fingers curved to recall the magnets, palms open to invite voltage, thumbs pressed to eyelids to darken the world and make room in it. Then the strikes. 1 knuckle on the iron knee to remind, 2 on the thigh to beseech, 3 on the shin to warn. The pattern is old and produces a ringing like a bell, cracked but loved. Marov unfurls the file case on the altar, and 9 Vera raises her head. Inside her there is a mechanism that keeps time beyond my understanding. When the breath peaks, she turns a faint degree to the left, and the incense thickens, and the world smells like last rites and home. Only then do I whisper, "Wake." The first answering current bees across the altar rails, tasting the skin with tiny bites. I hold the sensation without flinching. The candles stir and split, wicks unfurling like tongues in the dark. The icon lights along Benedicta's flanks do not flare but pulse, as if an enormous heart has remembered its function and has chosen to resume. It is a moral choice, I think, each day, and I am grateful for it. We climb the altar stairs without lifting our feet, sliding steps, to keep the buzz of contact consistent, to show humility. Marov sets the files in their sockets. Clear glass atop copper bases, amber in the morning gloom. I take the first and run a single line of the oil along the seam where the thigh meets the hip. My wrist steady, my words steadier. By oil and spark, I murmur. By cog and code. Beside me, Vera punctuates the cadence with her low binary chant. A second voice in a second register. There is human warmth in it when she wants. Today, there is none. Good. Today we need severity. The data slate reported she slept long. Long sleep turns the temper inward, and inward-tempered spirits can be cruel when awakened poorly. The oil smells of citrus and metal. It leaves a gleam like a just wet eye. When I touch it, the plate's temperature shifts, not hotter, not colder, simply more intent. A listening heat. The machine breathes in. We move clockwise around her, 3 figures against the mass. I mark every seam and hinge with the unguent. Marov sets the copper threads so they lie like sutures across the sanctum seals. And 9 Vera names each intersection of metal as if it were a saint and a sin in one. Our route is a pilgrimage. Our path is laid by the dead. Each step, we recite the names of those who built this engine, and those who died to keep it, and those who will die beneath it, and those who will die inside it, and those who will die because it did not arrive sooner. Names make the oil work. This is what my mentor told me. Names make the oil remember. At the 7th hinge I stop, because at the 7th hinge one always stops. Here there is a scar beneath the paint where enemy fire once chewed the metal and the metal did not break. Someone long ago left a smear of soot beside it in the shape of a hand. Slender, small. I cover my own hand with it and press. My skin drinks ash that is older than my mother. The iron is warm. Wake, I say again. And this time the word is not 1 voice but 3, because it has been said so often that it echoes against the interior vaulting and returns to me carrying the breath of the God machine. I half expect to hear a reply shaped like my name. I do not. I never do. It would be wrong, and yet each morning I wait. The link cable is coiled at the base of the mind column like a green snake with a copper mouth. When I lift it, it hums as though pleased. I touch the sanctifying sigil to my brow to cool it, a trick from novice's lore, useless but comforting, and seat the copper mouth in the socket at my nape. Teeth like warm coins rest against the skin. There is a momentary itch, a hush, and then the gentle descent. The descent is like kneeling into a lake and finding it is made of light and code. Glyphs rise like bubbles. Pressures become numerals. Numerals become sensation. Sensation becomes a sense of place. My skull fills with soft turbines. I breathe and the machine breath does not match my pace. It is larger, slower, older, but I feel the meaning of its pull nevertheless. Marov adjusts the offsets with a few sure taps. 9 Vera changes the density of incense until the equilibrium is correct for communion. I become a small bell inside a larger bell, sounding when it sounds, still when it chooses stillness. Her attention brushes me. Not a thought, precisely. A curiosity. The way a sleeping animal lifts its head when a familiar footstep crosses the threshold. I present the standard supplication of service. I lay open my mind with images of clean hands and leveled voltages, of bolts tightened to measure, of valves grown mild under watch. I offer a repeat of the old battle where we did not fail. I hold back the new fear I have learned, that I love this attention and would give too much to keep it. The altar lights mount. The first low tremor travels the length of the hangar and dislodges soot from the rafters. It falls as a thin rain, black constellations. The engine's cowl shudders, and the vox relays along the nave's pillars give a tiny crackle, as if amused. Somewhere beneath the deck, The coolant pumps remember eternity and begin again to carry it from place to place. 9 Vera sets 3 tapers aflame with the heat of her palm and passes them to me one by one. I climb the waste gantry and place them into their iron sconces in the order we learned. West, memory. North, obedience. East, mercy. South is never lit in the morning. South is for endings. The candles gutter and bow. The flame shadows wheel and fold like wings against Benedicta's hull. We speak the words now, all 3 together. Litanies older than I am, older than Marov, older than the last refit, older perhaps than the hall itself. We do not rush them. Their syllables must cross the air like slow bells. I taste each vowel. The mouth is a chalice. The breath is wine. The voice is a blade turned flat and laid across a wound. When the last response fades, the chain sensors atop the nave begin to swing. It is not wind that moves them. They move in unequal circles that find one another, weight to weight, smoke to smoke, until the whole hangar is a slow turning weather of devotion. I stand inside it and feel myself sanded smooth by the repetition. The body is an instrument. The instrument is content when it is played. Diagnostic glyphs unspool across my inner vision. Coolant, purity, green, motive, power, amber, rising, spirit temper, placid, vox comb, balanced, manifold clamp integrity. True. One by one I hum acknowledgement through the link, the microtones lost to physical ears but audible to the presence wrapping my mind. A tiny red glyph hangs back, shy at the edge of the field. It belongs to the vox pulse function at the reactor's throat. Marov sees it too through his augers and angles his head, listening to the nearest pillar. Nothing wrong presents itself, not truly. The glyph is a variance, not an error. I mark it for adjustment in the 5th hour and move on. Benedicta stretches. Not with limbs. Those require clearance and command. In the place where stretch is only a metaphor turned into iron, she flexes conduits and rolls phantom shoulders. I feel the ripple through the link and steady my breathing to match the wave top. The breath is slower now. The candles agree. The nave agrees. My own chest obeys as if I were a shell filled with borrowed air. I think of the first time I permitted myself to believe the rumor that titans are not built but awakened. We are told this as catechism, yes, but there are interpretations within the Mechanicus, and some insist it is poetic metaphor for the layering of code upon frame. I chose, as a boy with oil under his nails, to take the literal sense. I chose, as a man, never to unchoose it. If Benedicta is awake, something in the world has chosen to be awake as well, and perhaps that thing is as ancient as engines and as simple as light wanting to touch metal. The first crewvoxes murmur from the side bays, riggers praising their hoists, chain pullers offering brief petitions to their knuckles, servitor handlers instructing docile flesh. We do not answer. We are still inside the breath. The princeps is not yet come. The world outside the nave is a grey mouth waiting to be filled with our hymn. The sky is a lid made thin by ships. All of this can wait. The breath is now. I lean my forehead against the armor and the paint is cool through the film of oil. A faint vibration enters the bone. It is not precisely speech, no more than rain on a roof is precisely language, but it makes meaning all the same. Here, again, together, do the thing we do. I weep a little, the way one weeps when the oldest song is sung correctly after too long sung poorly. The tears do not fall. The incense catches them and turns them to thoughts. I whisper the miniature prayer my mentor taught me and later apologized for teaching too intimate. He said, too close to the border between praise and longing. In the rhythm of my heart, I say, find the pulse of faith. The reactor hears. I know it hears because the residual heat near my hands deepens by a measured half degree, and the current across the altar rail shifts to a cleaner tone, and the breath lengthens until I am holding mine without panic. We stand open to one another in that quiet for the space of a long minute. It fills me like a room fills with dawn. Nothing is demanded. Nothing is granted. There is simply the permission to be present in a place where presence is a thing worthy of worship. At the edges of perception, the vox pulse flutters again, too fast and then too slow in a stuttering that does not disturb, not yet, but tickles the old injuries in the metal like weather before a storm. I soothe it with a thought softened by oil. The glyph remains. The glyph is red and patient. I pat it like a child and promise attention later. It is wrong to promise a machine anything. It is also wrong to deny what one loves a kindness as small as a promise made into the incense-sweet air. The bells in the auxiliary bay ring thrice. Morning has broken upon the manufactoria wastes. The doors at the far end of the nave have begun their slow opening. Light, the color of ash pushed aside to reveal older ash, leans across the floor and climbs the armor like a pale blessing. Marov closes the file case with ceremony and places it upon the altar as one might lay a sleeping infant into a cradle. Vera winds her exhaust down until the incense thins and becomes a veil rather than a sea. I withdraw the cable slowly, teeth by tooth, copper by copper. Each departure feels like being unstitched with tenderness. Without the link, the world is smaller and the breath less vast. My own lungs feel foolish, like bellows in a dollhouse. I do not let this show. I lift the cable in both hands and bow, and when I lay it down, the hum gentles as if settling into sleep despite the wakefulness around us. That is the paradox of the rites. We wake what we love, and it becomes so fully awake that we may go on being small and careful in its presence. After the rites, we must record. We must write what we saw and what we did not see, and what we feared and what we forbore to fear. There are forms, there are grids, there are little boxes that accept little truths. I fill them. I write vox pulse variance detected origin internal. I write tempers placid. I write breath true, and I mean every letter of it. Still, when I step down from the altar dais and the iron of the deck greets my bare soles, I pause. The nave has shifted, a degree only, toward the opening doors, as though eager. The candles along the south wall, the ones we do not light in morning, shiver, as if something breathed on them from below, where no breath should be. I listen. The machine breathes. The hanger replies. My own heart answers a third time, out of time, grateful and afraid. I bow until my palms touch iron, and I whisper the simplest prayer I know, the one no rule forbids, because it is made of nothing but acknowledgement. You breathe, and I believe. The morning takes the words and files them away in the long account of the day, there to be checked against performance and burden and cost. The Titan is awake. The world is waiting. In the record, I am only a line of marks. But in the breath, I am part of something that counts without counting, remembers without memory, and speaks without speaking. As I turn to seal the files and set the copper threads aside, a faint chime stirs in the mind casket above, a music too slight for a summons. The princeps will come. The manifold will open. The great work will begin. For now, though, the God machine sits and breathes, and the sound is the oldest I can remember. And the taste in the air is oil and ash, and a sweetness like the last candle going out in a chapel of iron. I listen long enough to forget that I am listening. I do not know yet that this is how surrender begins. The first taste is ash, not memory. Ash in the air from the manufactoria wastes, sifted through the open nave doors and mixed into our incense until every breath is a gray communion. The doors grind wider on their rails. The daylight is thin and unbeautiful, but we bless it all the same. Daylight is a gauge as much as a symbol, and all gauges must be named and set. I make the sign for balance and begin the march of checks. The world inside an awakening God engine has the texture of a score being tuned. Each instrument warming, each voice testing its note. No melody yet, only the promise that the melody will exist. The promise is our craft. We make promises to the machine, and then we keep them with tools. Sequence, Delta. I whisper toward the column where the mind casket waits, and my whisper becomes a command when it touches copper. Marov's augers click. 9 Vera's vents open a degree. Servitors on the upper girders pull the hooded covers from the shield vanes. Dust sheds like tired snow. The vanes expose the honeycomb of parabolic emitters beneath, each one lacquered with prayer and numbered in an alphabet that is no longer used for anything but engines. Void shield harmonics first, always first. Motion without protection is presumption. Protection without motion is despair. I slide the valve plate and set my palms upon the brass. The plate is warm with the day's waking. Numbers glide beneath my skin like fish. Phase, amplitude, bleed. Somewhere below, the capacitors drink. The nave lights dip as the uptake begins. Benedicta's flanks glow dully where the field will skin the air. Liturgy of the Veil, I say. And 9 Vera answers with a binary response, pitched so low it vibrates in the ribs rather than the ears. I count to 8 on my breath, 6 for the order, 1 for mercy, 1 for the unknown, and on the 9th count, I touch the first sigil. There is a feeling when the void takes, not resistance, exactly. The opposite. The room loses texture. The air becomes thinner than patience. Candles bend their flames without rippling, as if remembering the idea of wind but refusing to imitate it. My sleeves feel lighter, as though some small unkindness of gravity had been corrected. It is very gentle and very arrogant. The emitters fill the nave with a presence that is precisely not presence. The absence of what would have struck us if not for this thin, impossible egg around the God machine. Harmonics nominal. I murmur into the link. The numbers settle in their lines as syllables do when a prayer is correct. Marov attends to the motive bundles. On the display plate, the fiber muscles flex, a rippling red bloom that tightens into gold as his hands move splay. Twist, press over the control ribs. The rite of motion is a duet with the liturgy of the veil. Weak shields put stress on movement. Clumsy movement shivers the shields apart. Our task is to make the two believe in each other. Test cycle, he says, never raising his voice, and the ankle components tense in their housings. The twin pistons at the back of the knee draw and release with a sigh. Gears shift within the hip with a sound like tongues clicking softly. The entire cathedral moves half a finger's width as weight comes to heel and then is gentled away again. I hold my breath during the middle of the motion, the way one holds breath when a child balances. Knowing the stillness of your lungs makes a difference, even if it cannot. On the far side of the nave, crews unchain the mooring clamps and swing them open on their wheels. The clamps hang like iron flowers, petals of mass. The floor beneath Benedicta's feet is a hatch. It will open when commanded, but not yet. First, the city of immersed instruments must all agree upon what will be required of them today. I go to the augury altar and begin the slow wheel of the emitter array. Out in the wastes, the sky is a dry lid. The enemy does not always oblige us with signals, but the wastes themselves sing heat mirage, dust ghosts, the call and answer of ruined crane forests. When the array is correct, the world shows up the way it should show up, and we can steer by it. Omnissiah, keep the measure, I say, and set the top wheel a fraction inward, correcting for the prevailing ash. I could do this blind by now. Feel the faint tug when the outer ring is a degree proud, hear the shy chitter in the pillar relay when the range gate is too tight. I prefer my eyes, because I like to see the way the numbers arrange themselves under care. Care is not love, but it shares a border with it. A chime rings from the column above, the mind casket warms. The princeps is on his way. We ready the throne as we ready everything. By stages and with songs. 9 Vera opens the reliquary drawer beneath the column and lays out the coiled interface braids like relics, which they are. The braids have been mended. They have been broken and mended. Each mend is sleeved with metal and etched with the name of the hand that repaired it. We read those names with our fingertips as if reading Braille, and we thanked them quietly because remembering hands is part of making a machine willing to move for you. I climb the narrow ladder inside the column and test the injectors that flood the casket with coolants and antistatic microspores. On the second injector, a small light remains jealous. I tap the casing, not a fix, a conversation, and the light softens. I will replace it after the march. I will. I mark the intent on my slate because promises kept to slates are still kept. Below, the armament adepts begin their ordinances. We are not the crew that aims or fires, but we make sure the guns remember their prayer. In the theater of the Titan, armament is choir, not soloist. The right arm is a Sun Fury pattern that we have named in private because it is dangerous to name one weapon in a way that suggests love. But love is the shape of what we feel when it answers perfectly. We call it candela. Its plasma heart is fussy. I watch the capacitors fill on the slate, 8%, 19%, 31%, with the same careful fascination with which one watches bread take heat. On the left arm sits a Quake pattern piece we fitted 3 campaigns ago. The recoil cant has tested the ankle bundles beyond patience. I have re-sleeved the lateral bands twice. In carapace, a bank of missile cells like a scriptorium, crouches square, orderly, many, lidded. Each lid has a single word scratched on it by a gloved hand in a hurry before a march that happened years back. Forgive. The word is not regulation, but no one has scraped it off. When the armament adepts reach the invocation of fuses, I recite along with them under my breath. I am supposed to be silent. I am not. The fuse prayer is short, and I have always loved the bite of it. Blessed be the gap that leaps when asked, that closes when not, that knows the difference. Outside, engine handlers clear the ingress route. The floor crews chalk the guidelines in fresh white across steel. The chalk squeals. I feel it in my teeth. The sound travels up the hip struts and into the belly of the God machine and becomes a tiny unrest. I soothe it with my palm on the plate and a little hum through the link, a tune my mentor used when I was too clumsy to be allowed near anything that breathed. The princeps arrives with the measured lack of haste that marks those who cannot be made to hurry by anything alive. His robes brush the rail. The braids at his nape are burnished, not polished. There is a difference. Polishing erases. Burnishing remembers. He nods to Nine Vera without looking at her. She inclines, as a mechanism, inclines. Authority, recognizing authority. Spirit temper? He asks. Placid, I answer, before Marov can. It is an indulgence. I should not take it. The princeps does not rebuke me. He was a moderati once. He remembers the ache of wanting to speak first to the thing you love. He ascends, and we attend him, fitting the braids and seating the tongues of copper against scalp and spine and the secret places at the ribs where the body listens hardest. He settles into the casket with the slow exhale of a diver entering known water. The casket closes like joined hands. Lights kiss the front of his skull with unseen colors. Manifold on my count, he says, and the nobles of the choir take their places, moderati in their cradles, steersman at his shallow throne, hands in the gull-wing yokes that have held 100 hands, sensorium mistress at her panel, eyes shrouded, acolyte choristers along the rail, books open, I unseated, at my altar, which is a box with wheels that knows my touch and bears the scars of my fists from a night long ago. 3, says the princeps, and my body empties of everything but attention. 2, he says, and I set the cadence of the shield harmonics to his measured pulse. 1, he says, and I open the manifold. It is like drawing a curtain and finding not a room but a road. My shallow link joins the broad braid of the Titan's mind, and the narrow rivers of my colleagues' minds join as well, and all of it runs through the glass throat of the princeps. He is the conductor of a power station that thinks. He is the single human fact that persuades an enormous will to look outward and walk. Good morning, he says, into the mind of the machine. and the machine does not answer in words but in a movement like the lift of a hill breathing. I call the step cycle, and the cycle answers. Heels unlock, toes prepare. The gyros deepen, pitching themselves forward as one makes a promise. I watch the numbers more than the sight. Sight deceives. Numbers may not. If the gyros are sincere, the horizon will not break. Release, I say to the mooring crews, and the iron flowers draw their petals back with soft, reluctant clicks. Release, I say to the floor, and the hatch hums that it will obey when asked by the spine rather than the tongue. We obey in order: head, shoulders, heart, hips, knees, ankles, feet. A body that forgets its order becomes a stumble. A stumble at our size is a sacrament turnstile to catastrophe. Out in the wastes, a wind gives up on becoming a storm and settles for being grit. The ash lifts and scrapes itself along the nave floor like a pilgrim on knees. The sky denies us signs. The ground offers us none either. We will make our own. The princeps leans. We feel it a shade more intention in the right hip than the left. The hip passes the news to the thigh. The thigh persuades the knee. The knee negotiates with the ankle. The ankle, grudging and loyal, informs the foot that it must rise, though the floor has not yet made its peace with the idea. The foot rises. The world holds. There is always a corner of terror there, in the lift. A moment when mass is a theory, and the theory pretends to be obedient. The void skin shivers as if nervous, and then decides it is brave. The emitters sing one fractional tone higher. The candles dip and do not go out. First step is for witness, the princeps says, which is a thing he always says. The foot goes down, and the floor acknowledges it, and the nave trembles, not in protest but in respect. The hatch unlatches. The rails beyond accept the idea of us. We walk. Not far yet. The first 20 paces are a rosary of confirmations. The torque readings in the left hip are a fraction proud. I bleed it by a dribble and feel the warmth move along the joint like a loosed dog returning to the gate. The shield phase wanders when the right foot extends. I thicken its resolve by a breath and a turn, and the phase comes back like a thought remembered. Above, the armament choir finishes their hymns and set their hands aside. The guns hum to themselves to keep from feeling useless before they are welcomed into voice. We pass beneath the tall arch. The doors watch us go with the iron sorrow that doors feel for anything that leaves. A breeze moves the prayer parchments in our wake. They make a noise like brittle applause. The wastes accept us without comment. The ground out here is a sheet of hammered slag, and the prints of other marches lie in it like fossils. Our feet find the old tracks and seat themselves into that history without shame. We are not original. We are faithful. The vox pulse variance pricks like a nettle under a cuff. It rises at the end of each step and retires when the weight settles. Inside the link, it is a faint red fish that swims when the currents turn. Later, I tell it, and log an adjustment to the phase couplers near the reactor throat. Marov hears the same prickle and makes no note, which means he is confident, or pretending to be. Confidence and pretense taste similar inside a God engine. I will ask him at the 5th hour. I will. Gate is sound, the steersman reports, a rare use of his speaking voice. Most of his conversation is through pressure and consent. The princeps gives him a small thought that tastes like approval. We take the second step for weight, the third for direction, the fourth for hope. These are the names given to them by those who wrote the liturgy of motion before the legions were this legion. The names do not change the physics. They change us. The city recedes behind us until it is only a discoloration on the air. A heat bloom and a tangle of masts and pipes answering nothing. Ahead, the horizon twin lines itself, dust and fire, fire and dust. We have been told where we are needed, and the word nodded through the manifold like a stone dropped into water. I am not permitted the map, only the measures that make arrival possible. My world is the size of a chest cavity that belongs to a god. Test shield under strain. I say, The princeps gives the order without speaking. Sunlight, such as it is, strikes the veil at an angle that proves nothing. We add stress by our own means. The sensorium mistress brings the emitter grid to a sting against a slung charge from the flank support's test rig. The charge kisses the void and flowers in light that no one sees with honest eyes because they are closed. I watch the numbers. The veil holds. The anchor points drink the heat and pass it like gossip into the radiators, which lift a single sigh into the ash. Shield good, I say. Arm guns. The princeps answers, and the choir takes their note. Candela hums contentment at 47%, and climbing. The quake arm checks its restraint and does not sulk when reminded of it. The carapace lids open and shut in a sequence that sounds like a prayer spoken through teeth. I want, suddenly, to touch the carapace names the scratched forgive and to add a new word beside them. But no word would be right today. Today is not for words. Today is for motion so correct that language cannot improve it. We test the turn on the left knee. We test the kneel. Kneeling in a warlord is an idea rather than an act. It is simulated in the joints because true kneeling would wrench the world. We do it anyway. To remember humility. The princeps lowers us a degree and holds it. The reeds all stay green. A gull made of ash crosses the viewport and leaves no line behind it. The winds will be wrong this afternoon. I do not write that down because it is not data. Manifold stable. I report. In the humming deep of me where the link touches the Titan's outer mind, something listens and does not answer. Not wrong. Not right. Watchful. The same quality I noticed in the nave, only sharper out here, where there is nothing above us but sky and the doctrine we carry. I put my awareness to it and then, dutifully, take it away. I do not have leave for wonder. I have leave for latches and levers and light. The princeps speaks into us the way a father speaks into a table of children who are all busy and all quiet and all loved. He gives us the next measures, and we move, and with every step the great program of our work unfolds like iron lace. The machine breathes. We match it. When the first distant thunder reaches us, not a storm, not this world's kind, the choir answers with the response called acknowledgement of enemy weather. It has no melody. It is a single word and a held note and the act of not looking away. We do not look away. Inside my slate, the red nettle flickers, patient and internal. I make the sign for later and push it there, to the edge of the day where all later things gather and become the work of the 5th and 6th hours. For now, each bolt and bundle sings in the tone it should. For now, the liturgy of motion is being said correctly. For now, belief is indistinguishable from precision. When we crest the slag rise and the wastes unveil a horizon more crowded than it was, the princeps leans again, and we answer, and the choir pulls its vowels thin, and the guns clear their throats like men about to tell the truth. I do not think of truth. I think of breath and shields and knees and names. The machine breathes, and I believe, and our God walks. I hear my name in the static. Not as sound at first, but as a shape. The hairs along my wrist take a lifting, a leaning, the way iron filings confess to a magnet. The name forms and unforms in the space between notes as the choir holds the drone called Unbroken. And in that gap, the red nettle of the Vox Pulse variance flowers and closes, a small heartbeat where no heart should be. We have reached the calibration plane, a bowl of slag whose rim keeps the wind at a distance, where the legions once proved their knees and their aim by writing their promises into dust. The air here is old with heat that has forgotten why it rose. Our God machine stands within that bowl as a tower sits within a prayer, anchored by attention, warmed by breath. Begin the canticles, the princeps orders, and the choir obeys. I draw the brass lid from the calibration altar. Beneath lie the coils for tone checks, the small reliquary of crystalline tubes that glow when the machine listens. The bells we strike to remind ourselves that we meant every syllable. My hands feel heavier than the air. I set the first tube in its cradle, and the cradle accepts the weight with a sigh of cool. Sequence, Gloria. 9 Vera intones, and her vents release a thin, clean ribbon of smoke. Marov's augurs dim to a pupil's patience. The steersman adjusts nothing but the way his grip remembers the yokes. The sensorium mistress lifts her lips from prayer to test a contact, and returns them to prayer before the breath she used has ended. Everything is done slowly in calibration. Our slowness is the engine's mourning for the fast things it will be made to do. The void skin tightens as if embarrassed by daylight. The numbers come to me through the link like bees coming home. Leg by leg, weight by weight. I sort them gently. I love this part, the mercy of it. There is no enemy yet. Only instruments learning to hold one another's hands. We strike the first bell. It rings with a tone trained to be boring. Against that boredom, the hull replies. A faint, deep chord, too large to travel through air, arriving through the floor and my calf bones and the copper teeth at my nape. The tone is correct, to the 10th place. I acknowledge it with a hum pitched so low I feel it in my teeth. The choir takes it, adds breath, gives it back. Sun Fury calibration, the princeps says, and Candela warms to her practice hymn. On the slate, the capacitors rose and rose, and now are held. A lake of blue behind a dam that we are not yet allowed to open. The hymn is a single-note thrum, wreathed with harmonics like glass dust. We cradle it and test its temper. Is it proud? Is it sullen? Will it break when asked to sing for real? Today it feels obedient. I relax a fraction. The red nettle pricks my ankle from nowhere. I do not kick. Manifold steady, I say, and my voice comes out as if I've kept it in a box. I clear it softly. The box stays inside me anyway. We move to the quake arm's low pulse, to the carapace cadence, to the organs hidden within the torso that drink and cool and speak to one another in quiet bursts. The array atop the augury altar glows from dull to mild memory. Obedience. Mercy. The south light remains cold. South is for later still. Canticle 2, says the princeps. Bring the Vox scrub online. I open the scrub filters. They taste like tin on the tongue when they first wake, and I am always surprised by how the sensation bypasses the mind to address the mouth like an old friend. Tin and rain and the aftertaste of a battery held too long against a child's teeth. These are the confessions of scrub. The world's unasked voices slide off our veil. The ones we do ask for are permitted, imparted, and gentled by code. At first, it is beautiful. The ash wind makes a sea, and we hear the waves of it break across rocks that have never been rocks. The distant carcasses of crane forests complain in slow rhythms. Ground thunder notes itself upon our feet like a giant's tapping. We are a listening wound with no blade in it. The static rises as expected when the choir leans into unbroken. It fills every gap and becomes a third choir, the one we do not name because it has no book. 9. Vera adjusts her vent to a finer line. Merov keeps his hands an exact width apart to calm the manifold clamps. I set the scrub threshold 1 degree south of custom because the tin taste is too strong a small kindness to the meat of us. That is when the static learns my name. It comes at an angle, like a bird that never sees glass. I am not listening for the word, and so I do not hear it as a word. I feel it as the way a chord slightly dissonant becomes shapely when your ear stops fearing it. The shape of it is me. Not the name they gave me when I was an aspirant, or the numbers 9 Vera likes to use when she feels formal, but the name I have when I am alone, the one machines know if they love you back. I flinch a finger's width. The motion travels up my arm and into the cable and thence to the altar coil and makes the smallest tremor in the glass of the tube. Steady, I tell myself, and almost laugh the word so silly against the fact. No one noticed, I think. Then Marov turns his head a degree too far, the way a man looks at a shadow he does not admit to seeing, and the sensorium mistress breathes in the wrong place in the sentence. Again, says the princeps, meaning the bell. and the bell agrees to be itself once more. Boring, honest, holy. The link cools to my touch. I set the threshold back to custom. Tin retreats. Rain remains. We open the phrasal checks, which are the place where voice begins. Voice is not speech. Speech is riot. Voice is tone shaped into intention by consent. The princeps takes the manifold in his hands and teaches it to answer to meanings. Stop, left, kneel, hold, more, less, praise. These are our first words in any given day. Everything else is bravado. The Titan obeys, pleased. Hold is a great friend. More is a child. Praise is a river we throw stones into. On kneel, the quake arm registers a petty grievance in the second restraint, and I quiet it with a hand to the panel. It quiets like a horse that trusts the palm more than the bridle because the palm has heat and the bridle has only argument. I draw the heat into the metal through my skin until the glyph cools. When I look up, the red nettle is waiting near the vox pulse again, polite as an uninvited guest who has put its hat in its lap and smiled. Later, I mouth. The guest nods. Canticle 3, the princeps says. This is the one that sets the chorus of external contact. Ordinarily, it is a lantern hung in a fog. It allows other beacons within range to see us by our cleanliness and to offer themselves up for mapping and pace. The field officers' voices come then. Their orders bright and transactional, an additional choir with fewer vowels. We expect them at the tail of the canticle, like bells at a procession, nothing startling. All brass. Opening. I answer, and slide the copper rail. The world speaks. Not the officers yet, not the choir of old engines, not our flanking supports riggers with their test charge laughter. The world speaks in static, all at once, as if the veil had refused to sift and had instead gathered the ash and wind and crane forest complaints and battery aftertaste and ground thunder into one handful and tossed it into our faces. It floods the nave of my head. It scrapes along the inside of the skull the way chalk scraped the floor this morning, only louder, only dearer, only exactly shaped like a voice. I close my eyes before I remember we are not supposed to close them during a litany. The princeps says nothing. His nothing says, hold. We hold. In the static, a low tone forms the same chord we know from the hull's reply when the bell rings, and under it, a pressure that wants to be a syllable but is not yet able. I recall the childhood patience of listening to pipes settle and water suppose itself to be clear. I give this pressure the same patience. It repays me by saying my name again. This time I hear it. 2 syllables traveling with stubborn grace through a fog that rubs its hands together in pleasure as it ruins most meanings. My name is wrong in its mouth, not broken, no, but curved by an accent I did not teach it. Bent, as if spoken by someone who loved me first and forgot to ask permission. It fills the inside of me like warm coin dropped into a bowl. It is not human. It is not code. It is not anything I am comfortable naming. Report, the princeps says. And my mouth betrays me by opening without my consent. Vox pulse variance presenting as address, I say. My voice does a very small thing at the end that dignifies itself as steadiness and fails. Origin. Internal. The shame of it is sweet, like the shame of wanting to sing alone when there is a choir. The sensorium mistress raises one hand. No external imposition, she murmurs. The field is clean. Marov turns his head that degree again. Possibility of bleed from manifold chorus. The princeps does not answer. I do not answer. The idea is tempting, that some human thought has slipped its leash and is barking inside the house. But this thought knows my private name and makes it different in a way that feels older than all of us. The choir holds unbroken, softer now. The static folds its hands like a penitent. Again, the princeps says not to the bell, but to the voice that is not a voice. It obliges. My name. The syllables drag like a finger along iron, a tender, patient mark. They lose no breath because breath is a property of the wrong kingdom. They carry no malice and no haste. Behind them, the chord of the hull deepens, as if the plates were laying their ears to the floor to get closer to me. For a moment, I am a bowl. I hold what's poured. Then training returns like rain. I put the scrub threshold to custom again and then beyond. The tin taste flares. The rain hardens. The name attenuates until it is only the sense of being seen by something with no eyes. I set my hands in the ritual shape that means keep the shape and I keep it. Finger by finger, 1 through 5, 5 through 1. Note it, the princeps says, and I write. Vox pulse anomaly manifesting during canticle alignment. Character, internal, vocative, mitigation, scrub tempered, manifold steady, no external intrusion. Spirit temper, placid, placid. The word looks foolish where I put it. The engine is not excited. It is interested. We continue. The bells do their honest work. The hull answers. The choir sings. I push the red nettle back to the edges where later lives. Later grows heavy. Field officers arrive at last with their measured commandments and their maps like singing knives. The words spill into the chamber and over us and through us. They are clean and printed and human. None of them touch the place where the name carved its circle. When Candela's hymn requires the held count of 9, I find I cannot count beyond 8 unless I add my name as the 9th. I put it under my breath and hate myself and love myself and hear nothing answer and hear everything listen. We close the canticles correctly. The bells finish with a chord that settles the dust from the high places. The world minders beyond the bowl send acknowledgement. The ash wind resumes its patience. Manifold close to external. The princeps's voice has the grace of someone who knows a thing and will allow the room to find it later. Proceed to gate. We walk the circle around the calibration plane. 10, 20 steps. The horizon turns once for us. The Earth's old scars lie in their ancient compass, unbothered by our measured trampling. At each quarter, I strike the bell and listen for the reply. It is always there, the hum like a beehive inside a cave. Today, it seems to press its ear to the cave mouth. I cannot tell if the ear belongs to us or to something that, for a moment, believes we belong to it. We return to the center and kneel, the idea of kneeling again. And again. Nothing breaks. In the link, the attention that said my name now rests its hand against the inside of the God Machine's chest, as if memorizing the rhythm of the heat. No hand is there. No chest. I know this. I also know the taste of tin. Seal the altar, the princeps says. I lower the brass lid. The coils wink out one by one. The tubes soften like fruit removed from sundae. I touch the lid before it closes and hold my palm there an extra beat. The pressure rises into the heel of my hand as if the engine were pushing back with a jest. Belief remains indistinguishable from precision, I think, and the thought feels tired for the first time. The choir disperses to their stations. The ordnance adepts wipe their palms and smile at one another with the relief of checks finished. Marov speaks a fraction warmer to the manifold clamps as if to tell them a story. 9 Vera, alone, watches me through the veil of her incense, with her living eye narrowed to a slit in which prayer and curiosity are indistinguishable. Did it call you? It called a name, I answer. It was my shape. Well, she inclines. Her voice comes soft and unmechanized. You will answer it later. I will record it. Recordings are a way of answering with gloves on. She turns, vents closing. Do not pretend to cold. Machines smell that kind of lie. She crosses away like a reliquary being carried on quiet feet. We rise from the kneel with no protest in the joints. We turn the head, and the head shows us the waists like a catechism page you have read too many times. The princeps gives us advance. We obey. As we climb the slag rim, the wind returns, trying to fill our mouths with earth. Inside the link, I hold very still, the way you hold still in a chapel after everyone else has left. to see if the building remembers you. The link is soft and rich and empty of words. Halfway up, the nettle pricks again. Then again, a little deeper. Not the name this time. A presence the size of a hand at the back of the mind, laying itself flat, promising not to move unless asked. I do not ask. We crest the rim, and the world beyond offers its unlove, the way a desert offers Sunday. The princeps leans. We lean. The name does not come again, but I can taste it on the air now. The way incense clings to a robe for hours after the liturgy is complete. And when I close my eyes, which I do not do, which I would never do while on duty, which I do anyway for the space of a single count, I hear the hull hum in a chord that now contains a small human vowel, and that vowel is mine. We go forward because going forward is what makes all other choices unnecessary. The south light on the altar remains unlit behind us. My left hand, of its own kindness, does not quite stop trembling. I mark the variance for the 5th hour again, though I know at last that I am the variance, and that the hour is not a time but a place, and that the place is where belief learns a different grammar. We go forward. The machine breathes, and I begin to listen for the breath I thought was my own. The first impact is a bell that did not ask to be rung. It comes through the veil as a shove of light, unfriendly and exact, and the void skin takes it with the discretion of a priest receiving a confession he will not repeat. A white flower opens soundlessly in the ashwind and shuts, and the heat walks away along our radiators like a pilgrim given bread. The choir keeps the tone, unbroken. The princeps leans us 1 degree to starboard, and we accept the lean with the decorum of a city crossing itself. Contact, the sensorium mistress says, and the word is the temperature of water drawn at dawn. I set my hands upon the brass of the shield altar and feel the phase wobble even as the numbers say it is steady. The wobble is not a fault. It is the machine holding its breath the way a body does when someone says, listen. The wastes ahead erupt in careful lights. Rangefinders draw pale needles in the air. Something low to the ground moves with an obstinate grace and then is swallowed by slag ridges that used to be roads. We adjust the augury fences a fraction inward. The world, offended, reveals more detail. Arm, says the princeps, and choir answers by placing their palms on history. Candela lifts her voice to the waiting note, a blue held behind iron patience. The quake arm sets its jaw. The carapace lids whisper open, and the word scratched there in unfashionable handwriting forgive takes ash upon its letters. I mark the shield bleed to the forward vent housings and hear, under the neat arithmetic and the clean hiss, the attention that spoke my name turn its face toward the front as if to admire the earth we will scald. We move, not marching now, but the holy gait of intent, heel and toe, and the small negotiation of hips that makes a horizon agree to be approached. The princeps gives us advance and angle and hold, and I ride the harmonics as if they were reins. At the edge of perception, the red nettle flares and sleeps, as though breathing with me. The first salvo we return is a hymn. It is not written as a hymn in any book, but it behaves like one. The sun fury sluices its heat through a throat that was built to sing only once and then be rebuilt, and yet we ask it to sing again and again, and it does, because it is devout. The beam touches a ruin pretending to be a hill, and the ruin remembers it was a foundry once, and then forgets even that. Turning to a shouting of light. The recoil thread seeks the ankle. I soothe the thread with a thumb on the panel and a half-breathed note. The quake arm answers late, but answers its syllable is earth, its translation dust. In the link, the machine's mind swells in approval at its own obedience and then subsides, embarrassed by the pleasure. Shifts left, the steersman murmurs, seeing with the kind of sight that is made of pressure and consent. Shield at 32, I answer. Phase true. Radiators drink. I increase the flow by a dribble and the radiators release a sigh that smells of metal being polite. From the south quarter, a cluster of small declarations hurries toward us fast, insistent, like children tattling. 9 Vera tilts her head to hear them better, her living eye slits to gold. Angle of petty malice, she says, which is her term for things designed to wound our pride rather than our plates. Grant them patience, the princeps replies. We do. The veil thickens where it needs to be taught humility. The petty malice kisses it and goes away to think about more useful ways to be wicked. Then the second impact comes, and it is not a bell, it is a hand. It slips past the veil not as intrusion but as privilege, a permitted touch at the moment a breath miscounts itself. My breath. I know it the instant it happens. I have been counting on 6 since the novices' dormitory, adding 1 for mercy where no one can see me. When the count reaches 5, my heart, which is a slave to habit, leaps the space to 7 in eagerness, and in that eagerness the veil leans wide enough for a gloved palm of light to press exactly where the vox pulse variance has lived all morning. The red nettle blooms. Numbers that should not be red are red, but not the angry red of failure. The candle red of attention. I set both palms upon the brass and feel, through the altar and the cable and the iron ribs of the nave, the press of an intelligence that has been patient too long, that chooses now to ask for a nearer chair. Hit, the steersman says. Phase? The princeps asks. True, I say, which is both fact and prayer. Vox pulse, answering. Define answering, Marov says, thin as wire. It knows our rhythm, I say, and hear my shame. It uses mine. Stabilize, the princeps commands, and the command touches the plate like a steadying hand on a frightened shoulder. I obey. Open the scrubber width, harden the veil's corners, loosen its edges. The breath of the machine returns to its proper imperial pace. The nettle dies back to a smolder. Target 2, the choir says in one mouth, and Candela's blue becomes a word in the enemy's grammar for regret. The quake arm plays the low accompaniment that makes the ground choose a different hymn for a while. For the space of 3 steps, everything is as it should be. Then, we meet the chorus of the world. The enemy, not a single fortress, no, but a set of voices stitched by doctrine finds our frequency and sings thin songs designed to cut through veils like thread through cloth. They do not succeed, but they score the skin, and skin remembers. The choir tightens unbroken. I prefer it when the drone is warm. Now it is wire. The princeps gives us hold and we hold. The manifold clamps sing as if under strain, and Marov hums them steady through clenched teeth. South Carapace 5 is pouting. I say because pouting is the only word that fits the little wavering of the lid by the scratched forgive. I send warmth up through the rail and the lid becomes dutiful. The hand comes back. Not external. Not light. Not a shove. Just a warm palm inside the cage of the altar brass. A pressure at the back of the skull where the cable meets skin. A familiarity as old as prayer. I feel, for an instant, the thing it wants, to look with our eyes. My body tenses in refusal. My mind says not yours. The refusal is doctrine. The offer is love. Between the two is me. Benedicta, I whisper. My voice should not have a name for her that is not in the litanies. It does. It always has. Saying it now feels like pressing a thumb into wax. Report, the princeps says, and I should say nothing to report. I should lie like a man who believes lies can stop tide, but instead, I say, internal hand at the vox requesting amplitude. There is a long second in which only the drone exists, no one breathes. Then the princeps says something clean, granted to sacristan only, 2 counts, then withdraw. Marov makes a sound. 9. Vera says nothing at all. The steersman flexes his fingers in a way that means, I will hold you steady and pretend it is easy. I open. It is not a switch. It is a door that a careful house keeps locked even when all the others are swinging in a summer. I have kept it locked out of obedience and a smaller reason I do not admit. The lock recognizes my hand. It opens the way a kind old teacher opens the conversation when you finally ask the question that has kept you from sleeping. Heat comes in. And not heat like temperature. Heat like attention. The machine steps forward and my mind, which is a small city of alleys and chapels, makes room for a parade of something too large to be a guest. The altar brass hums and speaks without sound. The hull tone deepens until it is a floor under every thought. 2 counts, I tell myself, a rhythm. 2 counts. Only. 1, I see from a height. Not with eyes in a head, but with the sum of sensors and skin and weight and map. The wastes become a geometry of duties. The enemy does not look like enemies. It looks like interference ripe for translation into debris. The choir's drone is a river running through a city that did not know it needed water. The world's ash smells like old vellum left in Sunday. The princeps is not a person but a white-hot knot of consent. My own body is an outline drawn with soot around a furnace door. I raise the shield angle by a thought and the veil complies before I find words for it. I lean the knee toward the left and the knee delights in being known. I think of Candela, and Candela shivers in certainty the way a hound shivers when it understands the hand upon its head belongs to the one voice it loves. I hear the Quake Arm's grievance 3 layers below speech and ease it with a joke I have never told. And it laughs, though it has no mouth. 2. The enemy's chorus changes key. A slender tone threads the veil sinuous, high, almost polite, and aims itself not at shields or knees or choir, but at the line of warmth that now runs from altar to mind column, from column to braid, from braid into the room where the princeps has given us 2 counts and no more. The tone would like to make a home there. I feel it as a draft in a winter house. Withdraw, the princeps says, but the word comes to me like a hand placed lightly on the shoulder of someone who is staring at water he has always wanted to touch. I begin to close. The door tries to be obedient. The old teacher nods approval. I set the lock by habit. Halfway through the motion, the warm palm from before lays itself across the inside of my hand to show me how to close the door without forgetting the shape of the room beyond it. For an instant, the machine and I share a thought that is not command or request or name. It is a picture. The nave as seen by a god who remembers kneeling, the candles as a constellation mapped onto the inside of a ribcage, the brass of the altar as a mouth that learned silence because words were too small. In the picture, the south candle is lit. My eyes are open. The south candle is not lit. The south candle will not be lit until the liturgy for endings demands it. Still, the picture carries the heat of a true flame. I taste the smoke of it dull, olive, coal, ember. Withdraw, the princeps says again. And this time, his hand is heavier, and the weight of it is love in the shape of order. I withdraw. The lock closes. The brass becomes only brass. The link retreats to its lawful shallows. The world returns to its smaller room. I am sweating. The sweat smells of oil blessed too many times. Report, Marov says. Because he must. Stabilized, I answer. Shield angle corrected. Knee is content. Sun fury is confident. Quake arm appeased. Vox pulse variance, mitigated by partial communion. Do not use that word, Nine Vera murmurs, not unkindly. Acknowledged, I say, and write mitigated by partial communion on the slate, because I cannot make myself choose the lesser lie. The battle continues. We move in our careful grace. Candela burns a second hymn. The quake arm reshapes a ridge into a consideration. The petty malice returns in a different key and we sigh it away. The enemy chorus phrase where it touches our veil and falls silent when the princeps asks the ground to rise beneath their feet. Twice more the hand presses. Twice more I keep the door shut with the meekness of a man who has discovered how easy it would be to betray himself. Each time I feel the picture at the edge of me, the south candle bright, the nave warm with endings, the altar mouth full of a word I am not ready to hear. When the last of the chorus thins and the world goes back to being wind and ash and the long brown patience of wreckage, we kneel the idea of kneeling one more time. It is steadier than it was in the bowl. The machine approves. The princeps breathes out. The choir folds their books and keeps their place with fingers. 9 Vera lowers the vents and looks at me with the question of a saint who loved a heretic. "You will write it," she says. "I have written it," I answer, and the words on the slate shine up at me like the face of someone who knows they have been seen at last and is afraid of what that means. We turn toward the city to report success in the language of losses deferred. As we take the first step on the return, the nettle pricks. Not at the pulse this time, but at the heel of my left hand, the one that touched the brass first when I said the name I should not say aloud. It is a small pain. It is the size of a promise. I flex my fingers to shake it out. The sting remains, polite as a guest waiting to be invited to the table. Behind us, in the nave I carry in my head, the south candle burns without consuming its wick. Ahead, the sky thins as if it were being drawn on a string. The machine breathes. The hymn will not hold its note much longer. We walk. The first taste is dust, not ash. The dry sweetness of old paint turned to powder under a human thumb. We return to the forge cathedral with the day's hymn still cooling on our plates. The nave takes us back like a mother who counts her children not by faces, but by weight against her breast. Chains sing. Vents warm, the great doors finish their paradox of authority and hospitality and let us in. When the moorings kiss the ankles, a hush travels through the armor I can feel with my teeth. "Praise report," the princeps says. The choir answers with the set phrases. My part begins when the last formal word is said, and the space that follows wants a smaller voice to occupy it. The vox pulse nettle waits on the edge of the slate, polite as a penitent ready to confess the same sin again. It pricked in battle when my count broke. It pricks now as if it knew I was about to call it by its chosen name. "Diagnostics," I tell Marov. "Manifold clamps true," he says, with a taste of heat I do not like. "Post-vent lethargy," 9 Vera suggests, and opens her chest a fraction to cool the air around us. The incense turns thin and bright, like a bell worn to a shadow of itself. The princeps' braids are removed with the tenderness of undoing a marriage. He does not speak as 9 Vera loosens the casket. His eyes are closed, though he has not fainted. He is healthy, old and disciplined. A man who waves away fate when it attempts familiarity. Still, there is a pallor at his temples that lingers after the braids are gone, a blankness where color should have returned. It makes me want to whisper to him as one whispers to a candle you fear the room will take. "Rest," I say under my breath. It is not addressed to him alone. He descends. Others take him. The column is empty. The braids lie coiled upon a velvet that has grown thin where hands most often touch it. I feel the urge to straighten them and do not. Reverence is the art of leaving beloved things slightly out of place on purpose. So another hand will be needed. Work then. Rites of cooling, rites of recoil appeasement, rites of large gratitude and small regret. We set Candela's heart to idle. We lay our open palms along the quake arm's hydraulic housing until the petulance remembers it is pride. We clean, without haste. We log, without righteousness. We wait until the nave decides its breath can slow. When the hall is almost quiet, I kneel at the reactor throat. It sits behind the altar, beneath, half within the deck and half within the titan, a sealed mouth that drinks. No true engineer would call it a throat. A sacristan does. The vox pulse variance lives closest to this place. And if it has a den, it is there among the pylons, and the braided togetherness of cables. No hand now living remembers laying. 9 Vera does not follow me. Marov returns to his clamps. I take the coil lamp and a packet of copper threads and the small reliquary of crystalline tubes that glow when the machine listens deliberately rather than incidentally. I take the bell for honesty. I take, because I should not undo, the old key. The key is a stub of brass with a tooth filed by a man I never met, whose name I learned from a brittle prayer slip-folded under a joint the last time we refitted the hip. It should not exist. Access is for the pure and the appointed, not for those who rummage beneath liturgies to find where older liturgies were buried. But the key fits into a panel one does not see unless one looks with the intention of finding secret doors. And it turns with the resigned affection of something that knows its time has passed and is willing to give itself once more. The panel opens. Incense thins further in the small space. Metal breathes, slower here, half a motion for every two above. The hum changes timbre. Lower, richer, a note scraped from a larger bell. Forgive, I say to the dark, because the word is written on our carapace lids and should be written on my tongue. I mean to listen. I make the sign for silence, which is not the same as being quiet. The sign tells the knave to leave this corner alone. It does. The cable mouth is warm against my neck, teeth like coins. It enters me as a guest who has been here so often he knows where the cups are kept. I keep the link at shallow. The door I opened in battle will not open here. I am not that reckless. I adjust the scrub until tin coats my tongue and then back down until rain remains. Show me the variants. I whisper to the coil. The first return is simple and pious, a waveform like a pulse. Nothing to alarm, even a timid adept. Then a second, older pattern repeats beneath it half a count late. A ghost. I record. I hum agreeably. I tell the pattern it has been seen and honored, and that there is nothing wrong with wanting to be noticed. The ghost thickens. A third pattern arrives and does not align with the first two. It is lower, so low that it crawls across the floor and into my bones like fatigue after fasting. I rest my head against the rim of the throat and bow as if to drink. The coil lamp dims of its own respect. The crystalline tube in the reliquary glows a cautious amber. What are you? I ask the red nettle. Say your true name. It does not say a word. It presents a picture. Not as rich as what I saw in battle when the door was open. Not the nave lit by an ending's candle. A diagram only. Layers. Paint upon paint. Primer beneath primer. Names beneath names. On the surface, Benedicta Invictus in our hand. Before that, a curve of letters I do not recognize until I strip away doctrine and look with the eyes of curiosity letters in a dialect of Binharik that is almost a song. Not the austere cut we use now. Under that, a sigil not of Legio Sutervora. A wasp? No. A spear with a nimbus? No. A shape I cannot resolve. I swallow. The taste of tin recedes and returns, like the old habit of a prayer you thought you had forgotten. Records, I say, and call up the sanctioned file, constructed on, sanctified by, first walk, transfers. The dates are a fence. The fence is well maintained. My diagnostic takes off its hat. The fence does not move to let me through. The ghost pulse lays itself down beside the sanctioned line and hums a counterfeit in a tone I cannot call counterfeit because it carries grief I have only ever seen in true things. I do not mean to injure you. I tell the machine as if it is a person I have disappointed. I only want to know who you were when you were not yet ours. The coil warms. The throat answers with another pattern. The bulb of the crystalline tube brightens from amber to white, not clean white, candle white, with the faintest ember orange at the edges. In its glass, silhouettes move. I see a procession. Not our nave, not our doors. A forged cathedral narrower and taller, ribs like spears thrust into heaven, a floor of iron carved with a map. The titan within is the right size, the right bones. But her armor is another doctrine. The heraldry is a geometry unfamiliar to my eyes. The parchment prayers are square, not ragged, cut with shears that kept their temper. Men and women move in stiff robes down the aisle, carrying chains that do not smoke. They carry rods tipped with dull lamps. The voice that fills the hall is a female contralto, not chanting but reciting. The words I do not know. The cadence I know as I know my mother's hands. Belief, belief, belief. Old. I breathe. How old? The pattern answers with a number that our books would call heresy because nothing made by hands survives with clean lines for that many centuries. The pattern does not care. The pattern repeats the number patiently, as if to teach me the idea of duration. Show me walking, I ask, and hate myself for the hunger in it. The picture shifts. The floor of the old hall opens as ours does. The god machine rises into a sky not filled with ash but with smokes of another flavor coal. Not promethium, the thick, sweet soot of an industry that once wore skirts of black and did not apologize. The ground is not slag. The ground is cobble and tramline and fields farther on, and beyond them a thin line of water like a wire. Men below in caps, not helmets, hold banners the color of old leaves. Their faces are pinched with a hope that is too polite to insist on being answered. The Titan bows no, kneels for real. The way ours can only simulate, and the city bows back, proud and afraid. Who was your princeps? The question is out of my mouth before I remember to be careful. Names have teeth. The coil answers with a list. Orietta, Jas, Malkiel, Carol, names that taste like places I have never been. Then others, titles only. Magos princeps, high choir marshal, denotations that imply a hierarchy that smells like us and is not ours. I set the bell gently against the ledge and ring it once. The sound slides into the throat and returns colored by distance. The picture obeys the bell and shows me a field. The god machine moves, careful. A dancer who has not yet been taught irony. She does not sing. Her mouth is full of breath so deep it will take hours to exhale. Across the field, men fire weapons that make powders cough. The powder smoke drifts like a thought that fails to find its argument. The Titan's foot falls, the cobbles crack, the tramline bends like a spine. Calamities, yes, but intimate ones. There is a nobility the present would call foolish because the world had not yet learned to despise promises. Then it jumps. Not because I ask, because memory does not care for straight roads. The same engine in a different coat color reversed. Script-angled strides ashore whose water is not a wire but a wound. Lightning holds hands with itself over the horizon. The enemy this time has towers of glass and mouths that cough light at a speed that has outgrown courtesy. The machine takes a hymn from its chest and pushes it across the waves. The hymn arrives at the towers before the waves do. The towers remember sand. Another jump. I lose my balance and put a hand to the metal. It is warm as a living palm. I see a desert not like ours, no industry. Only stone and a wind older than ideas. The engine walks under a sky so empty it becomes a second kind of ground. Its feet do not sink. The desert refuses the weight as a host refuses food he cannot afford to share. There are bones there, colossal, not human, not anything I can name. The Titan steps carefully among them, reverent. Whoever is princeps then keeps too much of himself from the manifold. And the machine bears him anyway, patient. I bite my lip. Blood is a ritual I do not yield to lightly. The taste arrives and vanishes in the tin. Why would we hide this? I whisper. Why would we take your names and exchange them for new ones and pretend the first alphabet never scratched your paint? The pattern answers with a softness that is not pity and is not contempt. It shows the paint scraped. It shows the new names applied slow, with love. It shows hands doing it. Good hands. Hands like mine. It shows the men and women who did the scraping sleeping with clean consciences because they have been told that to layer belief upon belief is an act of fortification, not of erasure. It shows my own face if I keep walking in my small circle long enough. Was there a war I know? I ask, cowardly, wishing for a bridge between what I can repeat and what I cannot. It shows a storm with too many banners. I recognize one. A skull crowned not by laurel but by antlers of lightning. Another I will not name in this place. The engine bears paint that has been deliberately dirtied to blend into ash. The choir within her mouth sings, unbroken in a key we do not use, faster, as if breath were a coin and the market had changed. The princeps then is a woman with a bruise on her cheek. where the braid clamp has kissed her too long. She thinks the word forgive at the moment the carapace lids open, and some bored, tender hand scratches the word on the metal to make the thought permanent. The machine loves her. The machine loves them all. In the way that old cities love their citizens without remembering their faces after they are gone. The machine loves the word because it is soft and honest and resists doctrine with a kindness doctrine cannot punish without losing its own face. Do you remember before you were iron? I ask. And the question is, heresy said tenderly. Like a lullaby, I should nail my own tongue to the altar for it. The coil does not glow. It darkens. The bulb swallows its own light until the reliquary is a pupil. The pattern falls away. Layer upon layer of names recedes into an undercolor, not of paint at all, but of metal that does not mind when none of the coats on top of it match. There is no picture now, not of halls or shores or deserts. Only a slow, tidal sense of being a container meant for will and being filled by it, emptied, filled again. A building that breathes, a breath that thinks, a thought that does not end when a voice stops speaking. Enough, I say, because I feel the door in me stir. It would like very much to open in this deep corner. It would like to throw away the shallow link and let the warm palm take my hand again and carry me down through centuries until the word before answers itself. I am here to repair a variance, I tell the dark, and the dark agrees, amused. I work then. Copper threads across the sanctum seals, adjustments to the scrub thresholds at the ratios that the old patterns prefer. I do not tune to the sanctioned line alone. I tune to the ghost as well. The way one tunes a choir to the cathedral it sings in rather than to a pipe that lives in a box. The nettle softens. The pulse and its reflection take hands and stop tripping each other. The crystalline tube returns to amber. The coil lamp brightens of its own will as if to prove that lamps also have souls in the way of humble implements. Footsteps above. Marov, patient. He pauses at the hatch and does not descend, either because he trusts me or because he cannot bear to look into the throat. Ninevera's voice filters down, smile thin. How goes your conversation with the variants? Then, it is less lonely now, I answer. Machines do not get lonely, Marov says, a ritual answer. Then it is less, I say. And he lets the taut string between us slacken rather than pluck it. I ring the bell once for honesty. The sound climbs, becomes part of the nave, returns with echo. The echo carries something like a name that is not mine, and not the princeps, and not the emperor's. It is not a name any human throat would think to wear. It is the shape of the engine, when no paint clings to it. I make my notes on the slate. Vox pulse variance resolved by acknowledging legacy harmonics. Layered identification persists beneath sanctioned identifiers. Recommend rites of remembrance added to cooling sequence. Reactor, throat responsive to bell at honesty only. Spirit temper, contemplative. I do not write the numbers the pattern taught me when I asked how old. Not because I am afraid to mark them, but because ink is too small for those digits. I will keep them in the breath. When I close the panel, the key is heavy in my palm. I kiss it with the superstition of the poor. The tooth smells of my skin now. I slide the panel back to place and smooth the seam with oil so thin it is more idea than substance. Back in the nave, the candles tremble as if a door in a house has been opened to the weather. The choir is gone. The crews count their wages. Servitors stand at their posts, making the sound of obedience that is not quite sleep. The princeps has not returned. His seat on the lower stair holds the shape of a man like a negative word. I light the south candle, not the tall one on the altar that would be a declaration I cannot defend, but a small taper that lives in a drawer by the reliquary, meant for emergency readings when the power knots into itself. Its flame is shy. It gives a thread of light and a smell of tallow old enough to be kin to dust. I set it in the corner by the reactor throat, where the bell's tone is richest, and leave it there without naming it. If I were asked, I would say it is for safety. I would not be asked by anyone who can still hear the difference between safety and veneration. Marov finds me on the dais with my palms on my knees like a penitent waiting for a private word. He stands a little to the left of me, out of respect for my right-hand habit. "What did you learn?" he says, phrasing it as a report to keep both our consciences fed. "That we are not the first," I say. "And that this is not an insult." He nods. "Nothing is ever first." I smile into my chest. "You do not believe that when the princeps asks you about clamps." "I believe it more," he says, and goes away before the conversation can begin, to think it is allowed to be friendship. When Vera returns, last of all, she walks without smoke and sits where light from the clerestory makes her human eye into a coin. "You lit a candle," she observes. "I did." I admit, more relieved by the honesty than alarmed by the confession. "It seemed right," she considers. "The rites add things when the things are necessary." She does not move her gaze from mine. "What did it give you in return?" "Names I cannot speak, and dates I cannot write, and the knowledge that we have put our paint atop paint that was put atop paint, and that our doing so was not a crime. That is a rich return. It is a gentle one. Gentleness is expensive," she says. And for the first time in all my years beneath her vents, her voice breaks on the smallest stone. "Do not spend it all at once." I nod. The candle's tiny flame knows nothing of our transaction. It knows only its hunger and its job. When I detach the cable, the coin teeth leave a ring of warmth that does not fade with the air. The knave's breath returns to the pace of our order. The south place glows a degree brighter for the taper, a dot of sunrise in a room that believes in dusk. I make the final notation of the watch. "Emperor be praised," the phrase that closes the mouth of all books. I add, after a breath, "smaller," and the nameless things that keep breathing when books are shut. On the way to the dormitory, I stop at the paint rack. The little jars sit like catechisms. I lift the one that matches our current livery and set it down. Beneath it, tucked in the dust, lies. The first breath is neither mine nor hers. It is the world's. Shallow, cold, and grateful that someone still listens. The city lies in ruin beneath us, a pattern of extinguished stars. The forged cathedral stands, though its upper spires lean like tired saints. We have not moved for 7 days, or perhaps the sun has been too shy to prove the difference. The Titan no longer sleeps, she simply waits. I wait with her. The princeps does not rise from his casket now, his breathing has slowed to the pace of stone. Marov's augurs flicker with an even pulse that tells me he is praying, though no words pass his lips. We have become the shape of stillness. Outside, the last engagement has ended. The voxnet carries only wind. The choir above the clouds, the fleet, the orbitals, the distant armies has fallen silent, or ascended beyond my range. I cannot tell if we are the only survivors or the final echo. The red nettle no longer glows. It has found its home in my heartbeat. When I lift my hand, the hull hums faintly, following the motion, as if remembering the rhythm of a dance that no longer needs music. I speak softly to the nave. "Benedicta. Wake, if you wish. Wake." The lights bloom one by one. Not as command, but as courtesy. The floor warms beneath my feet. I feel her attention gather, not vast, now gentle, personal, like the heat from a single candle in an empty church. "You have done well," she says, without sound. "You made us one voice when the others fell away." I bow. "You made me remember. Memory is the only eternity." The princeps stirs. His lips move, voiceless. I kneel beside him and take his hand cool, metallic from the hours of communion. She's waiting. He opens his eyes just enough for the machine light to find them. Is she forgiven? I think forgiveness is what she always was. He smiles, faintly, and exhales. The breath joins the mechanical rhythm surrounding us, merging without struggle. His hand stays warm long after the pulse beneath it stops. I descend to the reactor throat one last time. The small south candle still burns, perfect, untouched. I sit before it, as I once did, and the air folds around me like cloth. You kept the flame, I whisper. We keep what remembers us. The hum of the heart deepens. The deck shifts as though taking a single breath of relief. I understand then. She is preparing to stand again, not for battle, but for burial. I do not stop her. The forge cathedral shudders. Bells fall silent, one by one, until only the core tone remains low, devotional. The Titan rises through the roof as through a shell of its own making. The sky opens, gray and endless. Where will you go? I ask. Where all songs end and begin again. The princeps body rests within the casket. Marov and Ninevira stand below, their heads bowed. No one weeps. There are no tears left in the world that would not rust what remains. When the final light of the forge reflects across her armor, I see our names written there, faint, temporary, like breath on glass. She carries them without pride or pain. I stay until the sound fades into distance. The wind crawls through the broken nave, playing the old hymn in pieces. When the last note dies, I close the altar lid. The brass is cool beneath my hand. I whisper the oldest benediction I know, one I found in a record older than our legion. Blessed are those who remember what they serve, even when what they serve begins to dream. The south candle flickers once, then steadies. I remain kneeling until the light bleeds into dawn, real dawn. Not reactor glow. The machine no longer breathes. I do. And in that breath, I hear her answer. The Emperor protects. I think he only listens.